Alright, Earthlings! Welcome back to the Thundering Dice channel with your boys, the Thundering Dice Brothers, and today we are going to be talking about adaptations. Book adaptations, video game adaptations, hell, board game adaptations might not be off the table. It's just an adaptation from book or other media to screen, whether that be the big silver screen or the small screen in your living room. Since the dawn of electronic communication, we have taken our stories, fairy tales, or otherwise, and adapted them to a modern audience via radio or television or movie. And we're going to think about why it's so hard to do right. Because we have some notable examples that we have tried to cover for you guys in this past 370 odd days of us having this channel. And we've come to a couple inescapable conclusions, one of the main ones being that adaptations are really hard to do, and we're a fickle audience, and we're really hypercritical when you screw it up. So, Amazon and Netflix and Apple and all that, they're always looking for the next big thing, right? And for a while, it seemed like they were trying to push out adaptations at the speed of sound. You know, they were trying to do a Dark Tower adaptation. We got Wheel of Time adaptations. We have Rings of Power, which is actually some sort of a analog to Lord of the Rings adaptation. We've got video game adaptations into movies. We've got comic books like Watchmen adapted, Batman comics, Superman, you know, adaptations abound around us, in part because Hollywood has run out of ideas, I think. But adaptations are kind of hard to do, aren't they?
I mean, you know, actually, you gave a lot of different examples there, and I'm kind of rethinking my ideas. Okay, yes, in the modern sense, adaptations are hard to do. But when you started talking about other stories and things like that, I mean, all of Disney starts with adaptations.
That's a great point. I didn't think about that.
And that does kind of kick off, I mean, like, Disney kicks off a whole host of cultural shockwaves into the television industry. So I think they started out really good. Like, when they had to be creative and there was still a lot of, like, artistic merit where everything had to be drawn out, and the people making the products cared and knew that they had to make a good product to make money, and it wasn't just be like, oh look, Disney came out with a new Cinderella, well let's go see that because I have a daughter and Disney's been around for 100 years and it's an established company, and it doesn't really matter if this product fails because they still have enough money in the bank to do billion flops after billion flops and just keep pushing them out and calling it good. I think, yeah, like old school adaptations worked really well. And then I'll just say, like, modern adaptations, they die with Lord of the Rings and the first few seasons of Game of Thrones. And then after that, it seems that, like, pretty much everything just kind of turns out to be garbage.
Yeah, maybe we've been so hyper-focused on some of the things like Lord of the Rings and the Wheel of Time adaptations that, you know, until I was actually listing all the other adaptations out, I hadn't even thought about it. It just, like, freely associated that way in my mind, and it went straight to all the other adaptations, comic book adaptations, video game adaptations. And then you mentioned Disney. Yeah, those are the fairy tale adaptations, which in themselves are adaptations from oral traditions. We've got the stories of, let's go with the Grimm's fairy tales, right? Things like that led to the Seven Dwarves and Cinderella and all that. Those are all sort of carry-ons of oral traditions of stories that we've known. So I suppose we've always been adapting to new mediums. Maybe we give fairy tales more of a pass for adaptations to screen because they're often retold, at least initially, as children's stories again, and children can be told thematic things, but to show it to them is a different kettle of fish, I guess. Like, some of the actual way Cinderella ends is having the sisters chop their toes off to fit into the glass slipper. Yeah, they didn't really want to show that on the Disney Channel, did they?
Yeah, and it kind of ruins the love story and, you know, like the lovey-dovey message that Disney
takes all the
likes.
wholesomeness out of it, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. If you had the Grimm's fairy tales end the way they're supposed to do, I don't think Disney would have worked well. I think he would have ended up going, you know, to be a doctor, the way the backup plan was. So, yeah, you definitely have to modify them slightly. But modifying for an adaptation is acceptable when that modifying that you've done does not fundamentally change the story for no good reason. I mean, like, I know some people, especially in America, make race swapping a bigger deal than it should be. You know, like, I don't really give a crap if Cinderella suddenly turns black.
Yeah,
Like,
right?
It doesn't
because the
change
story should be cross-cultural.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it doesn't change the story, and it doesn't change how, like the outcome of the story and, like, who you're rooting for and, like, bad versus good. Those type of adaptations, I think, are fine. You know, let let minority girl see herself on the big screen
as the
and let
Disney
her-
princess.
Yeah, as a Disney princess, that's totally fine. Princess and the Frog style. I mean, of course, that story is a little different, but yeah, that's fine. But like when the adaptation changes the story itself, it would be like, all right, we're gonna change Cinderella, we're gonna make her black, but we're also then going to have Cinderella be like an escaped slave. You know what I mean? Like
now you're adding cultural now you're adding backstory that wasn't there to justify having it be black and have more of more relevant to today or something, or more relevant to social issues of the day.
Yeah. More relevant to the social issues of the day. That's when you like really just start you just kind of like ruin stuff. Like for like the Wheel of Time adaptation, Elaine and Avianda's random lesbian kissing scene that they just shoehorn in, that doesn't change. I mean, like, that changes the story in multiple ways, and none of them are good. I mean, like, when you're reading the book, yeah, they're really close friends. They become like bonded first sisters, but I never got the impression that they were seriously hot for each other the way the show did. I mean, this might just be the way I read it, but like, I never ever got that impression. Close friends, like bonded sisters, they would die for each other. That's the relationship I understood that those two had. Not a romantic relationship that involves physical petting.
While I don't agree that it changes the story at all, because the adaptation never got far enough for us to see if it changed the story at all. There are, when I read those books, I don't read this as a romantic quintuplet thingy between Rand and his 3 wives. I think he is amorous with each one individually, but not as a group, and I don't think they are amorous with each other beyond their compassion as like sister wives and good friends and first sisters in the case of Elaine and Avienda. I guess we'll never know how it would have changed it, and it was completely predictable and completely pointless. So you have a very because the world that Robert Jordan built was also completely unconcerned with gender identities. You notice that? Mm-hmm. It just doesn't matter. When somebody just doesn't like girls, it's whatever. Okay, no one really cares. There's never a plot point that sticks on bigotry in that respect. There's tons of racism and bigotry and wrong-headed notions, but it's never about sex. I mean, you think about it, So I don't think Robert Jordan cared. Of all the social commentary he put in that book, sexual relations were pretty much just people fuck.
Yeah. And if anything, actually, he made a statement by not making the statement, by saying that, like, in this society, they don't care about, like, if you're sleeping with a dude or if you're sleeping with a chick. It's completely immaterial to who the character is. It's not, like, that's not a cornerstone of it, like that. You never look at Rand and just be like, well, you know what? I mean, as you said, he's amorous and he has basically 3 wives. Well, he's a polygamist. That's who he is. No. Rand is the dragon. He's the savior. He's the one who's struggling to keep the world together whilst he's fighting his own internal turmoil about having to face the Dark One. Like, no part, of their sexuality matters to their individual characters because it doesn't dictate their actions. I mean, like, you could change Rand to be a gay person, but it doesn't change how Rand progresses to the last battle. I mean, you'd have to replace Min with a dude, because without that love interest, without Min, Rand goes crazy, dies, or a combination of the two.
But adding extraneous social commentary plot points to the adaptation is saying that you want to do something different than what the author wanted to do.
Yes.
And that's the problem when you get to an adaptation. Adaptation should be adapting it to screen, not adapting it for your morality or your sense of right and wrong. Because, holy cow, imagine if The Wheel of Time were adapted by a fundamentalist Christian. How much... how much that would change the narrative of certain things, right? Like the very nature of right and wrong, the balance isn't really borne out very well in Christianity right there. There's not really a balance between God and Satan.
No.
Like, God can exist without Satan, but in the Wheel of Time's mythology, you can't really divorce the two of them because he was a little more pulling from all religions, including Eastern mythology. So the idea of balance is like integral to the entire story. You have the balance of side in and side R. You have the balance of light and dark. You have the balance of chaos and order. You have the balance of the Dark One, and the Creator. Like these are things that never exist in vacuums, including Rand. So much of his internal struggle is finding balance. That's his whole character arc. And so when you're adapting and you take away some of those fundamentals and replace them with your own morality, you are shitting on the source material. You are slapping Tolkien in the face. You are slapping Robert Jordan in the face. You are saying, I read your words, but I think I'm better at it than you, and I want to do something differently. So they're not creative enough to create their own thing, and they're just creative enough to worm their way into adapting someone else's, and then they're just arrogant enough to change it for their own perspectives. That's the problem.
Yeah, no, that sums it up actually pretty well, that they're not creative enough to create their own stories, but they're creative enough to worm their way into another person's story, and arrogant enough to think that the change that they add to the story will be an improvement rather than a detriment. Yeah, like I see that so often. I mean, like Wheel of Time, it's all over the place, but like Rings of Power, that's like where it's chief, like just shoved down your freaking throat, where we will say, like, where we will just create plot lines and people, I mean actual people that have nothing to do with anything in the story, and we'll thrust them together and call it good. And, you know, like the Gandalf and the Nori and Poppy arcs with the hobbits, or what will be hobbits, and then even getting it wrong, where like, because I mean, like Harfoots are hole dwellers. I mean, like the Tolkien specifically states that they are hole dwellers, and way more, I mean, like the stories in the Harfoots actually should be reversed.
Yeah, isn't that funny? They even got their own internal lore wrong on that respect. They picked a word from the legendarium Harfoot and was like, oh, that sounds a lot like the Proud Feet that they yell at the beginning of Lord of the Rings. So we'll definitely make it that, because there's no other way that we'll be able to tell people that these are proto-hobbits. No other clues but their name, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's another thing too. I think people who are adapting it to screen automatically assume that the people who are watching it are too dumb to get it. So they have to dumb down the story, or make it less complex, or explain the story more clearly to you as it's going on. Because clearly, if I read it and understood it, there's no way I'm going to watch it and understand it, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And then also, like, the adaptations, specifically, like, just Wheel of Time and Rings of Power, the bad guys don't seem to be defined in a way that translates to audiences. Like, they did a weird thing with, like, Ishamael in Wheel of Time, making him way more lucid and not as crazy, but still sort of crazy, where he's just like, ooh, like when he dies at the end of season 3, it's like, oh, it's beautiful, Rand, like what I see. And Rand asks him, like, what do you see? And he's like, nothing, or however the phrase is termed. They take multiple points of the bad people and condense them into whatever scene that you're talking about, and you just never get this vibe. Like when I was watching Ishamael, I was always very interested in the character, but I never felt that character was dangerous to Rand or to anyone, really. You know what I mean? Because like he didn't do anything that like mortified me.
Yeah. Creating stakes. Maybe that's harder to do on screen than it is in books. The stakes never felt very high for the adaptation of Wheel of Time, even though the stakes in the books are the very existence of the world. Mm-hmm. Like the world is in the balance in this story, and you never really get that feeling in the Wheel of Time. They're just really bad at showing that to you on screen. And you're right, making villains villainous is kind of a big part. Like, yeah, I like complex characters and I like complexity in my stories, but, you know, sometimes keep it simple, stupid, is an axiom for a very good reason. Maybe we need bad guys to be bad sometimes. Not every bad guy has to be an anti-hero with complex motivations. In this case, just, it needs to be enough. He's insane and wants to end it all. That is his motivation.
That's actually, the way you actually phrase that, though, like, not every villain needs to be an anti-hero. That's a really good way of saying it, because this is one of these, like, problems with a lot of modern, not just adaptations, but, like, kind of everything. We kind of like divorced like good and bad into these these ambiguous terms that don't actually mean anything. Like all right, if a good guy strays into something bad, that's all right, or if a bad guy strays into something good, that's all right. I mean, depth and nuance is wonderful, but when you have your pinnacle bad guy, like in Rings of Power, Sauron, not doing anything really evil except killing a few people and, like, you know, some like light torture, and like of course that's evil, but if that's all you see your bad guy doing, or the main villain of the show doing, you don't fear that person or think that they're bad, because 2/3 of what else they're doing makes sense in your mind, and you're kind of like, all right, yeah, like, you know, like he hasn't just gone on a rampage, he hasn't just done this, he's just, kind of like doing what he's supposed to do, and it's like without any grit behind it. You're just like, all right, yeah, cool. Sauron is in Eregion and he's helping the elves. Oh no, he's kind of taking control of them. Well, that's not super evil. Now he's gonna stab Celebrimbor? Okay, yeah, sort of evil.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the killing of Celebrimbor doesn't matter that much because his purpose has been served in the story, and we never spent enough time with Celebrimbor to make him an emotionally impactful death. You know, when he dies, you know it was gonna happen. You know, something awful was going to happen to him. They spent way too much time, like, humanizing Sauron and the bad guys and not enough time humanizing the good guys in the show. We're supposed to just take on faith, because we've watched all the other Lord of the Rings, that all these people, the elves and the men, are the good guys, and the orcs and Sauron are the bad guys. Just remember that from the other books or from the other movies that you've totally seen, and rely on that to frame the way that you think about this show, rather than introduce us to fresh characters, and because they will be fresh. We're talking about characters we may understand 2,000 years later or more, but we're talking about a different age. These characters will be different. Elves may be eternal, but that doesn't mean they can't grow and change.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Like the elves of the Second Age will be a lot more arrogant. Well, arrogant's not the right word, but like confident and strong, just because of, in the First Age, that is like the age of the elves. So the Second Age is more they're like looking back to the heyday, and the Third Age is, all right, now we're actually fading and we're going to have to leave. You know, like
it's almost like the second is the plateau,
yes,
leading to the downslope, but and then the First Age is they've already been at the pinnacle.
No, that's actually that's the best way. That's actually really good at saying it. Yeah, because like the First Age, yeah, like it's all like, I mean, well, minus all the battles and everyone dying and the War of the Elves with Morgoth, and there's plenty of death and destruction and shit like that. But the First Age is like a huge shoot of like cities and kingdoms and elves explosion and stuff like that, like all over the continent. And then it's like kind of like a slow decline as Morgoth slowly, destroys city after city after city, and the elves become less and less powerful. But then by the time the Second Age comes around, you have that plateau, but you actually have a slight bump in the power and kind of like glory of the elves because of the forging of the rings.
And so defeating Morgoth.
Well, that's in the First Age.
But they've defeated Morgoth, so the great threat of their time, aside from their own, inevitable fading, has been accomplished. So there's no matter how much he took from them, they still won. Yeah. And so I would say that like their power is still at its height there. Like they've triumphed for a time.
No, if they've triumphed for a time, their power is at its height. But like when I said like the bump in the Second Age, it's like the bump of the rings, because the rings, especially when you're talking in Eregion, because like Sauron originally comes to Eregion, and like one of the his hook to Celebrimbor and the Smiths isn't the rings. It's that I have knowledge that can make your land as beautiful or even surpass the beauty of Valinor. And why should Middle Earth be kept in darkness whilst Valinor is kept in splendor? That's kind of the hook that happens in Eregion. And Celebrimbor and the other Smiths are like, you know what? This is actually that's not a bad idea. Why should Valinor be perfect and Middle Earth not be perfect? We're elves. We can recreate the beauties of the Nether Years. Let's go for it. Let's see what we can do. And then he starts teaching them, and then he starts bringing in ringcraft. So because of that, the glory and splendor of the elves is actually elevated slightly in the Second Age. So you do get that bump a little. So like the plateau does get, a nice, let's just call it hill, before finally slumping off, into the end of the third season, in the beginning of the Third Age. But in the show, for this adaptation, all you do is you just get the downfall, like there's no, like everything is sad about the elves, like they have to leave. It's like straight out of the bat, it's shown. Like if we don't get the rings, or technically at first, if we don't make a crown and then go into two two's easy to divide. 3 is a perfect balance, like to save the elves. Like you just get that straight out of the way with that, instead of being like, no, these are people who just defeated the evilest of evil gods with the help of the gods, but they still defeated him. And now they are like, cool, the Second Age it's not as great as the First Age, but our main threat is now gone for the first 1,000 years, where we can relax and enjoy a time of peace.
And renaissance and discovery and rebuilding and all that good stuff. The things that are possible with peace when you're not when existence isn't threatened.
Yeah.
Your way of life. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And then like it kind of reminds me, like At the very opening of Season 1 of Rings of Power, during Galadriel's monologue, there's a scene where it's Sauron in his, like, terrible form, walking, like, in front of a huge army of orcs. Now, all the orcs are cowering before him. Like, the ones that are closest are constantly trying to get away from him, but they're all bowing towards him. You know, like, there's this, like, kinetic power that he exudes, but they fear the crap out of him. But you only get that for one scene. Every other time you see Sauron with orcs, or Halbrand with orcs, or Anatar with orcs, it's either they're beating on me, they're trying to get information out of me, I just turned one of them, and now I'm gonna kill one of them. You know, like, there's just who he is. You see that at the very beginning, and then they're like, nope, never mind, let's completely humanize both sides, the Sauron and the orcs, and then have them go through, like, these weird existential crises that they finally come together, and that's how the story works, instead of the master manipulator who had thousands of years of tutelage under Morgoth to know exactly what he didn't want to be, coming into the Second Age and being like, all right, now it's my turn. I have seen 10,000 years of bloodshed. I will not repeat this. I will perfect the world. I will do what Morgoth failed to do, what he didn't even want to do. I will do what I want to do. I will create a perfect, lasting order to repair the hell that my master unleashed on the world. Like, none of that sentiment is even echoed in Rings of Power. Like,
nope.
if I didn't...
Complete failure on that point.
Yeah, exactly. If I didn't say these words, any person watching Rings of Power would be like, wait, that's what he's actually trying to do? Really? Oh, shit. Doesn't come across.
Better motivation. I mean, it's not a surprise that the original motivation that Tolkien had devised for Sauron is the best one. We're adapting a great story. Great story has these great story elements. They have people that you root for and people you root against, and they have challenges to overcome. And that's like the most basic essence of storytelling, right? I mean, this is even more basic than saying, you know, the plot points of beginning, middle, and end. You know, we're talking about people we want to care about, like telling a story about people that we want to hear and be involved with. If you don't have those basic elements of storytelling, then we as listeners or audiences or readers aren't going to want to buy in. If there's no one to root against and no one to root for, and everyone's just sort of gray, then there's no one to really like strike an emotional chord for us. There's no one that can really lift our spirits, and there's no one that can make us so mad or sad that it matters. You know, when you read Lord of the Rings, you get these feelings of hope and depression and sadness too, and it's so dark and it's so light, and there's so much hope to look forward to, and there's so much that can press down upon it, and none of that feeling comes through in our adaptation here, and it's just so very disappointing. And there's so much good stuff to work with, too. Like, I know that the ultimate thing that you have to do when you are adapting something is figuring out what to cut out and what to leave in. And they went so far into that process, they just freaking cut all the motivation out, left the character names in, and then rebuilt everything else around it with some picked and choose and cherry-picked events that did take place in the story. Rather than really focus, like, okay, what matters in the Rings of Power? If we were going to make Rings of Power this adaptation of the Silmarillion, which you can't do, I don't think, you need to focus. You need to first thing you do, focus on one thing that you want to work on. You can't say we're going to tell the story of the Second Age and then expect that to work out well. Then you also can't be like, okay, well, we're going to tell the story of the Second Age, but we're also going to cut out the entire middle part of the Second Age and the beginning part of it. We're just going to speed run parts of it and make up other parts of it. It'll be great. No one is going to notice, right? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Everybody is stupid watching these adaptations. Mm-hmm. You know, so they needed to get back the motivations. Like when you're writing a character storyboard for this kind of thing, I feel like, okay, why do we hate Sauron? What is he doing? What is his goal? How do we make the audience hate him? Why do we love Gandalf? What are his motivations? Does it matter where he comes from? Probably not. Let's give him some mystery and we'll explore his character as he is shown, as through his actions and his words, not through you telling me what his history was, and not by making up a history. When we watch Lord of the Rings, and if you watch Lord of the Rings never having read the book, you don't have to worry about who's good and who's bad and where the context is.
Yes.
Peter Jackson shows you the hobbits and Gandalf are the good guys. You're not looking in the beginning of the opening of Lord of the Rings when they're in the Shire and wondering if they're actually the bad guys secretly.
No, you're definitely not.
And when you see the orcs, you know, oh god, those are the bad guys. There's not like a family relationship we're trying to cultivate here. They look and sound and probably smell evil.
No, yeah. It's very like it's black and white. You know who to root for. You know who to root against. And then like another just like a practical scene in Rings of Power that should have been the easiest to film and write because just like emotionally it's like everyone would understand it when Elendil doesn't know what happened to Isildur after Mount Doom explodes and has to leave him behind. That scene should have been emotionally, like poignant. It should have been like a heart-wrenching scene to watch, and you should instantly empathize with Elendil because you're like, you have to leave your son behind and you don't know what happened to him. Like, this is every parent's nightmare. This is awful. I feel so bad for you. But when you get to that scene, you have a horse that freaks out and it runs away and he's like, all right, fine, I'll let you go. And then that's basically it. And at no point when you're watching it do you even feel a modicum of sadness for Elendil having to leave his son behind, potentially, alive or dead. He doesn't know. Because it just doesn't matter. You're just watching, you're like, all right, yeah, cool, next scene.
Yeah, that stuff should matter a whole lot more. And that's where the adaptation really breaks down. I mean, there's the obvious. The adaptation needs to be faithful as possible to the source material, but you still need all the regular basics of storytelling. You need characters. You need. Yeah, we're supposed to care about Isildur, but they don't do a good job of making us care. We're supposed to realize that Sauron's a terrible person, or being, but he doesn't come across that way. We're supposed to think of Celebrimbor as someone we don't want to die. We should feel sad when he dies, and I felt nothing. I was like, well, about time something bad happened, I guess. Like, it had to happen eventually. Finally, I suppose. Let's speed run it in the last couple episodes of season 2. Thank God we only have 3 more seasons of this nonsense to go. We should not be talking in such dry, sarcastic tones about the adaptation of the source material that ranks among the annals of the classics, along up there with Dickens and Dostoevsky and the Bible. These are all like books that will the stories and books and collections that will exist into the future long after we are dead, long after the authors that wrote them are dead. And if you can't ask for better source material than that. I mean, what do you want? It's all there for you guys in an adaptation. You have a hard job of chiseling away some of the extraneous stuff that you can't have on TV because of time constraints, or the medium doesn't really lend itself well to long exposition where the character is having an internal dialogue or something like that. I understand those things, but you still have to have the basics down, right? Adaptation is still a story. The story still needs to have good guys, bad guys, rising tension, climaxes, resolutions, and, generally a happy ending.
Yeah. It needs all those to actually work. Well, that wraps it up for us, guys. Thank you for watching this video about why modern adaptations suck. If you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe down below. Check out our Reddit, check out our Patreon, and we will see you guys on the next video.